Hey everybody, welcome back to Truth is the Only Armor. In this video, I want to try and quickly explain what I mean by the phrase truth is the only armor. And to do that, I'm going to establish two quick assumptions. So first is when we contemplate suicide, when we contemplate taking our own lives, the goal presumably is to end our own suffering, okay? So this excludes, honor suicides or anything like that. Maybe, I don't know, culturally mandated suicides. So to ease our own pain, right? The next assumption is that if we complete our suicide, if we do in fact take our own lives, then in so doing we're going to cause other people pain, presumably our friends or our family or something. So that's meant to exclude, I don't know, suicides in like a post-apocalyptic situation or something like that. Just trying to set the ground rules here. With those two assumptions, and kind of this third idea, basically, that everyone kind of has intuitively, where we're all kind of equal, at least to the extent that my suffering doesn't matter more or less than yours. If we complete suicide with those two assumptions that I just mentioned, in place, then it's logically incoherent, right? So we are stating that our pain is more important than anyone else's because we've assumed that we're contemplating suicide in order to end our own pain, but that if we do, then we're going to cause our friends or family or someone else the pain of our loss. And not just a loss, but the loss to a suicide, which, because of this very incoherence that I'm talking about, is more difficult for the people left behind to understand and take on board in their own lives than, for example, a car crash or a heart attack. Those things are tragic, but at least the human mind kind of has a framework for understanding them. Thing A caused thing B, and that was that. A suicide, because of the contradiction that I've just outlined, the contradiction that is sort of embodied by the elevation of our own pain, the elevation of importance of our own pain over other people's, that suicide inherently involves, it's more difficult for the people left behind to deal with in that way, or at the very least, it can be. The thing is, we already know that those facts about suicide that I've just kind of laid out there won't come as a surprise to any of us who have ever really suffered the suicidal moment, right? It's kind of the main reason we don't do it. We know that despite whatever horrible things might be happening in our own lives, we can't do that to the people around us. And so we continue suffering. And at least in my case, this has caused a lot of resentment at certain times in the past. For example, I have gotten angry that I am made to keep living when each and every moment is agonizing to do so, for the sake of the comfort of the people around me, or so the suicidal mind will spin it. So the point is, we already know, those of us suffering already know that, but as is evidenced by the fact that people do in fact complete taking their own lives, it's not enough. It's often not enough, right? That's where I think the phrase truth is the only armor can be really useful, because it refers to the very radical, heavyweight lifting act of integrity that not killing yourself under that kind of pressure requires. We know that suicide is sort of wrong in that way. At the very least, logically contradictory. But because our feelings and our thoughts are lying to us and telling us that the only way out and the only reasonable thing to do is to end this pain right now, other people be damned, acting in defiance of the suicidal pressure, the suicidal urge, requires a huge amount of, like I said, of integrity, of acting in accordance with the truth when all of the evidence your brain and your body are giving you is that that's the wrong thing to do. You know that your feelings and your thoughts are lying to you, but you need to choose. But we know in the suicidal moment, at some level, we need to choose to act as if, I think it's really beautifully stated, act as if the truth were true. The truth being, suicide is inherently contradictory and therefore we shouldn't do it. So that idea of acting as if the truth were true, which by the way is a phrase that I read I read recently with regards to this very question, the suicidal question, that is, I think is a really useful way to think about what surviving the suicidal moment really requires. I have a lot to say about, there's a lot we can just, a lot of really practical things we can do and discuss for getting ourselves out of the suicidal moment more. What we can do to our bodies to tell our bodies that we love them and take care of them, drink more water, get more sleep, all the things that we know we have to do to get our brain back into a place where it's not torturing us. But in the extremely high pressure suicidal moment, living as though the truth were true, I think, is a really useful way to frame the integrity that's required. And I mean, in the word integrity is sort of one of these things where you see it on a poster on the wall of your like 7th grade classroom, and it says integrity is doing the right thing when no one's watching, which is nice and correct. But I think it's more vivid to say, at least in my life, where it really always applies more, is integrity is more like doing the right thing, acting in accordance with the truth, when the void is watching you very closely. And so that's what I think truth is the only armor means. The only thing we can really do when we're under that kind of pressure is understand that we can't elevate our pain above other people's in that way, again, with those 2 assumptions from the beginning of the video in place. And just act in accordance with that fact, no matter what our feelings and our thoughts are telling us. Not other people be damned, our lying thoughts and feelings, the suicidal demon be damned, right? So that's what I mean by truth is the only armor. Now, that isn't specific advice on how to get some breathing room from the demon. I am working to provide that in other videos for you. But that's what I mean by that, and I think that's how you can argue yourself, at least it's the only way I know of, to argue yourself out of the most dangerously suicidal moments. When really it's just you against the void, and the only thing you've got is the knowledge that the truth demands you don't do it. It's not enough for many, many people. But I think if we phrase it this way, which is phrase it as directly as possible, it's contradictory, don't do contradictory shit. I think we're at least working toward getting to a point where we can start doing other things that will put the demon back in his cage and throw the blanket back over the cage and decrease the volume on the whispering that the demon will always be doing in our ears for the rest of our lives. Not to end it on a really dark note, but when the demon is really loud, we gotta argue him back there somewhere. Thanks very much for your time. Be well.